All right, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. We're going to get started here about 3 minutes early, just because of all the information that Sean has brought to share with us for time reasons. So, welcome to Missouri Humanities Virtual Capacity Building Workshop. This one will be on exhibit building. As I said, it's going to be presented by Sean FitzGibbons. Sean is currently the executive director of the History Museum on the Square in Springfield, Missouri. Sean has more than 10 years of experience. Oops. Of experience as a leader in museums and nonprofit institutions, as senior exhibits analyst for the City of San Antonio's Department of Arts and Culture. He led community programs and managed the Centro de Artes and Cultural Commons art galleries. He has also served as executive director for both the Meadows Museum of Art at Centenary College in Shreveport, Louisiana, and Pyramid Hill Sculpture Park in Hamilton, Ohio. He earned his Bachelor of Arts in American Studies from the University of Texas at Austin and his Master of Fine Arts degree from Washington University in St. Louis. Fitzgibbons is passionate about community outreach, cultural storytelling, and making the humanities accessible to diverse communities. But just like our previous workshops, because this is a webinar, if you have any questions throughout, please throw those in the chat and we'll ask them as we go. And then hopefully we'll have a few extra minutes at the end for additional questions. So without further ado, I'll pass it over to you, Sean. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. Really looking forward to this. It was a lot of fun putting this together. It's something I've been doing for, oh, let me make sure. And, sorry. There we go. Yeah, so I know it said I've been doing this for a while, and it was kind of interesting putting it into writing, something that is I've been doing for 20 years. I know he said 10 years, but it's 20 years of actually putting together exhibits and arts programming. But yeah, let's get started. So today we're going to do the purpose of this is to provide an entry-level guide to engaging and budget-friendly, most importantly, exhibits, pretty much from scratch. I know there's art institutions, history institutions. This is sort of a catch-all for just public engagement through exhibits. So why do exhibits matter? So basically, yeah, why even have an exhibit? It's exhibits are a great way to tell stories. I know when I transitioned from fine arts into history, a lot of people, the first question was, how are you going to manage going from doing art exhibits to history exhibits? But basically, it's the same thing. It's storytelling. It's finding that narrative, putting together objects and visuals, and engaging your guests through three dimensions, and yeah, just telling stories, whether it's paintings, sculptures, historic photos, documents, etc. And then yeah, getting the community involved, getting being a resource for the community is also extremely important. Okay. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I am going to figure out. I apologize. There we go. So starting at the pre-production, planning the exhibit, think about your space, think about where it is that you are going to have your exhibit. You know, I've seen exhibits in basement garages, in even on Facebook slideshows. So just think about what your space has for you to work with, the dimensions, the floor plan, the features. Like the History Museum on the Square, we have a pipe that goes from the floor to the ceiling right in the middle of the gallery. So just considering what you have as your space. And then with your lighting, just make sure that you're aware of any lighting that you have, whether it's track lighting for some museums, or if it's just regular room lighting. Just be aware of those, of how you're going to engage the space with that in mind. Some other things to think about is consider the visitor flow and accessibility. How are people going to come into the space? When they come into the space, what's the first thing you want them to do? How do you want it? A lot of putting the exhibit together is, like I said, with the storytelling, think of it as like a chapter book, right? They come in, the introduction wall is chapter 1, and then you want them to navigate through the space with the exhibit as sort of the guide, right? It is people are going to do what they want to do, and they may zigzag and all of that, so you have to be just aware of that. But you can guide them a little bit with didactics, or just how the space flows. Make sure that you have ADA compliance to navigate. For example, 48 inches for a wheelchair. There are tons of online resources for ADA compliance if you have any questions. Things like font size on didactics or wall text should be about 16 font or larger. But yeah, if you just Google ADA exhibit, there's huge amounts of information out there for that. And then, as I said, when you consider visitor flow and accessibility, think about desire paths. You can plan all day long, but your guests are going to go path of least resistance, right? So 3 examples right here of people, how the paths were planned, direction was planned, but your audience is going to do what they want to do. So just make sure that when you're thinking of the exhibit design and your space, how would you walk through it? How would you engage this space? And then just be very flexible with the outcome. Another thing that I tell my staff and have been working hard on throughout my career is I say low overhead, high impact, right? Basically, what do you already have, that you can leverage? What are the assets that you have that you can leverage to make a high impact on the exhibit or with your guests? Not a lot of people have the budget that MoMA or Whitney have. So considering what you have already and applying that, leveraging that to your exhibit. So things like if you have a collection, if you're a history museum, or if you have a collection, what do you have in your collection? What are some things in your storage that you have that you could put together and use? We were putting together a Community Cornerstones Black Educators of Springfield exhibit, and doing this inventory, we realized that we had a pretty cool locker system in our break room that the volunteers use for breaks. So we took that and we put it into the exhibit space, and we incorporated. We asked some people who were in segregated schools to what their locker would have in when they were going to school. So we recreated school lockers with that. So that took up a lot of wall space, took up a lot of real estate, but it was a really impactful part of the display that if we hadn't done our inventory of what existed in our museum, we would have never had the idea to have something like that. And then digital assets, what programs do you have? What design tools, or what tools do you have in general? And as you're putting that together, as you're beginning at the very beginning of the exhibit, create your marketing foundation. We call it the hero image here. You choose one image that is kind of encapsulates the exhibit. And if possible, if it's like a history thing, a history photo, we always try to put people in the photo. But I have some examples of what I'm talking about after this. But just make sure that it's like it's visually striking, it's engaging for people, and then you need these marketing deliverables to reach out to sponsors, to land the sponsors. And then as you're putting together the marketing package, make sure you design for postcards. Instagram is a square. Facebook event page covers are different dimensions. So you don't want to design just one thing and then try to crop and squeeze a postcard image or an 8.5 by 11 ad into a Facebook event cover image. So here's some examples of when I was talking about like uh, the hero image. You can see the two on the left. Those are from the History Museum. The one on the bottom left is our Instagram. It's a square. The one on the top is for our marquee, different formats. But yeah, just what is the one image that you can repeat and you can send it out for your press release, and yeah, so those are all examples of the quote unquote hero image. And then timeline and project management. I'm pretty sure the next the event programming lectures or webinar is going to have a Gantt chart in it, but with a Gantt chart, it's a really good way, especially if you have a couple people working on the project, to you start from when the exhibit is closed, and if it's a traveling exhibit, start from when you send it off to FedEx or whoever's shipping the exhibit, and work backwards to the day that you are working on that Gantt chart. It's a helpful tool for what we do here at the History Museum. Make sure you include benchmarks like landing sponsorships, your marketing, curatorial process, writing and editing. Editing is huge. And then along with curation, your layout design, and then the installation, the install and shipping, and always try to have a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Follow up with your team to make sure the next one the next exhibit you put together is better than the last. So don't forget your marketing timelines. This is just the rule that we follow here at the museum. Facebook events get created a month out. The email blasts go out monthly. But if you have specific email blasts, send those out a month in advance. Postcards, it says a month out, but build in shipping time so they get it a month out. So send it 2 weeks before that or a week before that. Press releases, I like to send ours 2 weeks out for things like this, because anything further, people forget about it. And then always be sure to send personal invites, follow up with sponsors, and have that personal connection about 1 week out. And here's a big catch for a lot of this. You need your marketing content to get your sponsors, but then once the sponsors are finalized, you have to put all of their logos and thank yous on all of the marketing. So just build in some time for editing on that. And talking about building out some time, always account on your Gantt chart for extra time for vendors, outside contractors. If you need 3 dozen images printed, you can't, in your Gantt chart, you can't put that at, send to printer 1 week and then the next week expect to have it delivered. Just build a lot of time within if you're dealing with outside contractors. Build flexibility for unexpected delays, not just with say your installation team comes down with the flu or something. There's going to be a lot of late nights, but you can get it done as long as it's built in there. And then also account for unexpected budget needs. Yeah, I have more than once found typos on postcards that we had to reprint, redesign, reprint, and then thankfully we didn't send it. But
Sean, there's a
yeah,
question real quick. Sorry to
sure.
cut you off.
No, all good.
Joey's asking, what media formats have been most successful for you?
Media formats, as in for marketing.
I believe so. He didn't, yes,
Ah,
he just said yes.
okay. Um, oh, so it depends on your budget. I know that being a history museum, that postcards are really popular with a certain generation, but they're expensive. Um, Facebook, I mean, you have to hit Facebook, you have to hit Instagram. 20 years, 10, 15, 20 years ago when I got started, those were like special things that you could do to get more people. But now those three, Instagram, Facebook, those are the two that are the huge. I mean, you have to do those. Um, but it just depends on where your demographic is as far as media, social media platforms. Um, you know, we haven't really done much into TikTok or anything like that, just because I don't know if our demographic is there, but hopefully it will. Hopefully we skew a little younger as we grow. Um, but yeah, you have to do Facebook and Instagram. That's where everybody is. You email newsletters, even if it's a 20% open rate. You know, we get a lot of people through those. So, hope that answers the question. If it didn't, let me know. All right. Curatorial process. Now we have the space figured out. We've looked at our inventory of what we have. Let's put together a show, right? Inventory and editing. So just begin with a comprehensive inventory of objects and visuals that you want for the exhibit. Coming from the art world, that's pretty much just what the artist had for you if you're doing a solo show, or you know, if you're doing a temporary exhibit, or not a temporary, borrowing an exhibit, that's pretty much laid out for you. But begin with that comprehensive inventory of what is going to be shown, and then always think of curation equals deletion, right? Curate with a what to delete mindset to avoid overcrowding the walls, just brain space for your guests, etc. Not just with the objects, but with text and didactics as well. There's that scene in the Brad Pitt movie, River Runs Through It, where his dad, the pastor, has him write a story. He says, "Cut it in half, cut it in half again." So kind of think of your writing in that way. The exhibit design. Now that you have all of your stuff kind of put together and in a list, think of this as telling a story in 3 dimensions, right? We talked about how people are going to engage the space, how they're going to walk through the space. So with that in mind, this is how you do that. This is how you have people walk through the space, right? So group objects together to tell a compelling story. I did a historic photo show a long time ago, and I had grouped like it was a 100-year-old photo show, and I had grouped the different photos as thinking of them as businesses. So all the lumber yards were together, all the lawyers, and all of those photos were in one. And I had somebody, it was a college student, come up, and he mentioned something about how, it's kind of interesting how all of these photos ended up grouped together like that. And I said, huh, yeah, it's kind of interesting. It's almost like somebody planned it. But anyway, so just as now you have the this is the chapters, the individual chapters to that chapter we're talking about. The other thing is history exhibits don't always have to be a timeline. Um, Break outside of time, telling the story in a timeline. Uh, I can't tell you how to do that, but because each one is unique. We have a creating communities, a Jewish communities in Springfield exhibit coming up, and we're telling that story within the immigration, the international communities immigrating into Springfield, and instead of having a timeline of these 3 decades, this group of people came in, this group of people came in the next 100 years, etc. We're breaking away from the timeline, and each of those storytelling ways forward, the narratives, is going to be unique to the exhibit. One thing that I think has been very important to my curatorial process is the third object principle. I don't really have a name for it, but this is just what easiest way to say it. You find creative connections between things that shouldn't be connected, right? So you went through your collection, you have your object list, and now there's a bunch of things, a bunch of stuff, and how do you tell these stories, right? So just think, you can have a relationship between two objects by a third object. And what I mean by that is, here's an example. You can find any two objects. I mean, yeah, they're both gray, but there's a rock and an iPhone. If you have this in, let's say, you have an exhibit and you have this list, there's a rock and an iPhone. How are you going to make those connect? Well, let's say you have a feather, right? So any I tried to make this example as hard as possible for myself. So then I pulled a feather, and then from that, we have tools of communication throughout the ages, right? So any two objects, a rock and an iPhone, by bringing in that third object, you have a concept. You have a chapter on a wall now. So it's the finding the connections, but this can be applied to concepts if you have your object list and you're trying to figure things out that way, or if you have that concept and you're looking through your collection trying to build for that concept. Like there was an art museum that did a show called Red Plus White, and it was a show all about things from their collection that employed pink within the artwork. So this principle can go concepts to objects and objects to concepts. But whatever you're starting with, use this principle and creatively construct that narrative and provide that way through for your guests. So no matter what you plan on with your exhibit, your guests are going to bring their own background. Everybody has their own story. Everybody has their own lived history to an exhibit. So don't feel like you have to overly explain everything. You can leave space for your guests to fill in the gaps. I'll talk a little bit about this later in the workshop, but you can get bogged down in the details too much of putting together an exhibit by saying, well, we need to connect this to this, and we need, if most of the time people are going to make those connections themselves, and you'll be surprised a lot of the time when they come in and your guests give feedback and you bring insight and concepts to your exhibit you would have never considered. Which is it's a lot of fun having those conversations. I'm going to talk a little bit about Fred Wilson's Mining Museum. This is a little bit of more of an example of that third idea principle. But in 1992, Fred Wilson, visual artist, contemporary artist, went to the Maryland Historical Society, and really, this is sort of like an artist as a curator as an artist. There's a lot of big words, but basically he went into the museum's collection and then used the collection as an art piece, as an art installation, by pairing things together. So, I'll just skip to the next one. So, most museums or most curators would put fine silver together. This is all drinking vessels. This is all, tea service or whatever. But the juxtaposition of putting the slave shackles in with this display and calling it metalwork 1793 to 1880 really sets up a interesting topic or conversation piece, and really gets people going. So this is an amazing, one of Fred Wilson came up frequently in my thesis, but this show specifically really put forward some interesting ways of blurring the lines between artist and curator. I mean, it's not just there's a lot you can say about that. Okay, so as we are now thinking of designing the space, we have the curatorial process done. We know the dimensions. We know how we want people to engage the space. We need to measure the walls. We need to lay everything out basically in the groups that you have put together. We use it's very, I was going to say shocking. It's very low tech the way that we kind of put things together. We just have in Canva a 1 inch to 1 foot wall template for each of our walls that we just put the images down, and we know that 1 inch is 1 foot within. 3D models are also, and I don't mean Google SketchUp, you can absolutely do those 3D models, but you'd be surprised at how many major museums use foam core and tape, right? So the one on the right is the MoMA's install team. So just setting something up like this and kind of laying out the exhibit, that way you don't have these old photos, old documents, big paintings in the space for months at a time. But it also it helps you like kind of top down visualize how people are going to walk through the space. Yeah. So another thing is when you're considering, like, let's say you have a series of paintings, photos, or whatever, how are you going to hang those on the wall? You'd be surprised, many ways to do that. There's salon style, where you just put the work up where it fits in, and we won't get into the hierarchy of images or anything with where do landscapes go or anything like that, but it just basically, you fit it. It's almost like a grid, but it's you fit where you can. Personally, I do 60 inches to the center of the image. That way, if you're standing at one end of the gallery and you're looking down, everything you see is all in one straight line throughout the entire space. And you could line the top edges, line the bottom edges, or do a grid. grid is very specific. Usually it's an artwork that is supposed to be in a grid. All right. As you're putting together, you have your object list, you have your walls laid out and all of that. Next thing, well, and you should be working on this throughout, but next thing is develop a spreadsheet for each wall. You have a thumbnail image of the object and when I say object, it could be a painting, it could be a photo. Object doesn't necessarily mean a 3D sculpture or a tea service or something. Put the thumbnail image of the object, its caption, the dimensions for that, and then any notes for installation or for your printer. Here's an example of one. The thumbnail, print dimensions, square feet. That was just for us to budget printing costs, location and any location notes, where we got the image, and these are public domain ones, but this comes in handy when it's like from our collection, which one of our collections it is, where is it, are we borrowing it from a university, or are we borrowing it from another institution, etc. And then the captions. Right, now all of that's done, test it in the space. Don't just trust all this pre-work that you've done. Put it in the space, lean the paintings, lean the photos up against the wall, do a walkthrough. You'd be surprised at how much of the final curatorial editing happens in this part of the installation. Because yeah, I mean, whether it's a 3D model or on your design app or whatever, it could feel great, but then all of a sudden you start getting these new ideas of how to engage people and how to have them walk through the space, etc. So this is very important to do the test run before you just start putting stuff up on the wall. All right, writing and designing didactics. Whether it's intro space, intro text, wall labels, or whatever, shoot for a 5th grade readability, regardless of the audience age. You're think about who's coming in, right? So you have kids coming in, field trips, you have kids coming in with their parents or whoever. You need to reach them, and you need it to be readable for them. But then also, who else is coming in? You have people who love your institution, maybe not the exhibit, right? These are people who, it's a Saturday, let's go down to the History Museum on the Square, right? So these people, these guests are, they're not going to know, you don't want to talk too much inside baseball or anything like that, because it's going to go over their heads. They're not going to be interested in it. And even if you get somebody who is they drove 3 states to get to this exhibit, and they are just deeply engaged with the content that you are putting together, they're just there to see the exhibit. They already know all that stuff, right? So don't try to impress people with your didactics or your text. Just put the information out there as plainly as possible. One thing that you should consider is your museum's voice. Do you want to be playful, or do you want to be way too academic, for the lack of a better word? We had so right now we have Democracy in Action, and it is a history exhibit based on citizenship and Springfield civics throughout the ages, and we put it together like you're stepping into a comic book. And so that was the tone or the voice for the exhibit was comic book, big bright letters, captions and thought bubbles and things like that. Um, and trying to get kids engaged in citizenship lessons. Not always easy. So another thing is don't pander, but don't talk down to your guests. You are with everything I just said, you are the authority and in the topic, and your guests want to feel that you are engaging them. You know, people aren't stupid when they come in and you're telling them how great of an institution you are for putting this exhibit out there. Um, they're not going to like that. But so just try to, as you're putting these didactics together and as you're thinking of the museum or the institution's voice or tone, just keep that in your head. Don't pander, but then don't talk down. And also just remember, only a third of the visitors will read any text, and less than 10% will read everything. So like I said, just keep, you know, write something, cut it in half, cut it in half. So. And then a little bit more about a little bit for accessibility, but also when you're building out your didactics, think of, again, for lack of a better term, 3 engagement zones. What are your guests going to read from 20 feet away? What are they going to read 10 feet away and 5 feet away? Right. So 20 feet, that's the introductions, that's your chapter titles. 10 feet away, that's just the overall description of the wall or whatever. And then 5 feet away, the captions and wall labels. So I just pulled this from a random website, you know, 20 feet, 10 feet, and 5 feet. So as you're building your didactics, just keep that in mind. Okay. One thing that I really like to do with our exhibits is consider guest engagement, not just you know, keeping not just iPads on the wall that they can go through or QR codes that link to videos or something like that, but you can start really inexpensively with you know, have a post-it note wall where people can say, you know, follow up with your exhibit thoughts or thumbtack the location on a map. All these different things. Just keep in mind, if you have a borrowed exhibit, they may request no pens or markers in the space. Even if you have, maybe it's not, you know, maybe that's in a different room if you have pens and markers. And then restocking costs. So if you have printed index cards specifically for the exhibit, just keep in mind that you're going to have to restock those. And if you're going to have an engagement wall, staff must review on a daily basis. You know, people are going to be people, and you give them a marker and something to write or draw on. They're going to have some things to write and draw. So just make sure the staff reviews and pulls on a daily basis. All right, so last looks. So this went, I apologize if it went too fast. I thought I had way too many slides, but start with space and your resources. What do you have to leverage to make this cost effective and engaging? Plan with a Gantt chart and with your team on timelines and benchmarks, considering marketing and adding a lot of buffer in between each benchmark. And then focus on storytelling through curation and design. How are people going to walk through this chapter book and get this narrative that you are telling them? And then, ensure accessibility and engagement through how you write and how you lay out. Also, no matter how grammar focused you are, always, always, always get a second and third set of eyes on any content you create. Speaking from experience, when I was at the city of San Antonio's Art and Culture Department, um, I was in the public art department, and if you write the word public art and you forget the L, autocorrect doesn't catch it. So if you send an email out or a press release, it looks correct. So always, always, always have a second and third set of eyes on what you create. And then, yeah, a final walkthrough once everything's up on the wall. Make sure, pen marks, all blue tape, everything is down, and try to, I know it's going to be difficult because you've spent, what, 6, 8 months on this thing. Try and see it from the visitor's perspective, maybe bring in, maybe not the sponsors or anything yet, but maybe some board members or some friends to come in and see it for the first time and try to see it through their eyes. And then you can make any last minute tweaks or any edits that way for flow and engagement. So with that, with about 20 minutes left, I hope you guys have questions, or do you have any challenges you're currently facing or faced in the past?
Doesn't look like we have any right now, but we'll give it a couple minutes.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, I thought 50 slides was going to take a lot longer.
Quite all right. A lot of good information.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think we're gonna have any questions.
Okay. Well, if Nick, you can share my email address to anybody if anybody has anything.
Oh, someone made a comment. They liked your Gantt for the planning.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that has been extremely helpful for our team.
But yeah, no. After the recording's downloaded, I'll send out the recording and the PowerPoint slides to everyone. And thank you all for joining us today. And Sean, thanks for being here and taking the time.
No problem. Thank you.
To give us this class. It was a lot of great information.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Have a good afternoon.
Oh, wait, we have a question.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
George, explain the 60 center rule on images. Okay, George. So let me bring that one up again. Okay, sorry. Deal with this for a second. Okay, so yes, I could definitely bring a little bit more into that. So from the edge of yeah, again, insider baseball, this is something I take for granted. From the floor to the center of the paintings is 60 inches, right? So from, the floor to here is 60 inches on every painting. So every painting is going to have a different height, a different bottom to it. So usually what you want to do is you measure from the top of the painting or the image to where the hanger, the wire, whatever mechanism, or even the edge of the frame, if you're just using the frame, take that measurement. And so let's say that's, to keep things easy, that's 10 inches from where the wire is to the top of the image. So that's 10 inches. Then you take the width, the height of the painting. Let's say it's 50 inches from, well, let's say it's 20 inches to keep things. So the painting is 20 inches tall. The wire is 10 inches from the top. So you subtract the wire from the middle, and that's 10 inches. Add that to 60 inches, and you hang at 70 so that all of those paintings have the middle of the painting fall at 60 inches throughout the entire gallery. Does that make sense, George?
Oh yeah, he said very interesting display method. And then one other person had a question now. Could you
Uh-huh.
explain the benefits social media has on your marketing? And I have noticed that you have to spend a lot of money to get followers and following. How could a small agency with limited budget could use a social media to their benefit?
Okay. Yes. Social media is crucial. It is it is the word of mouth marketing for today, right? It's people sharing and all that. Yes, it does cost a lot of money to get followers and following. However, we don't have a big budget here either. Um, but what is it's not easy. A replacement for spending a lot of money is spending a lot of time and going through, and as your institution, liking other institutions, inviting people from your friends and family, and spending, I mean, a couple hours every week, not just scrolling, but engaging, commenting, liking, following, sharing. Not, and so it's not just sharing posts, because sharing posts is just what you do to your to the people who follow you. But to get followers, you have to be out there on in groups sharing things. You have to be commenting. You have to be engaging, and that is what we do in order to make up for not having a budget that can just widespread spam everybody's social media. Cool.
All right.
Hope that helped. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's it.
Cool. Thank
Going
you.
once. All right. Well, all right, Sean, have a good rest of your afternoon and everyone else.
All right. Thank you.